meant for regulating genetic GMOs or GM seeds or GM foods. Explicitly कहीं नहीं. It's a conservation law. सबसे पहला इसका objective है conservation. And if you really look at most of the permissions that are being taken, I think about 50% or more must be definitely for agriculture-related purposes and research, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, agricultural universities, etc. It's very, very evident there. Only that much can be found out because not much disclosure is there upfront. Okay, Mycos BT brinjal. I think we must be all tired of this currently because we've been hammering it. One example here, but anyway, it's still relevant. It's current. It's right now. Now, when the ABSP2 process was going on, the ABSP2 Agricultural Biotechnology Support Project जो है, उसके अंदर it is not just an India-based project, which many of you might have discussed. There is Bangladesh involved, there's Philippines involved, etc. So permissions were taken by the National Biodiversity Authority to transfer first to when germplasm was brought into India. It was merged or whatever. I don't know the technical language. Back crossed with the BT gene here, and then sent back. Now, if you want to intervene, despite its limitations of the law, at any point of time you want to intervene legally in this whole process, we can see that we can try and track in terms of what are the processes and what are the applications that the Biological Diversity Act and the National Biodiversity Authority is actually screening, and where we can actually catch them. Because in this case, now this is a collaborative research project. When we tried to give this to a journalist and say, it's a collaborative research project, the agreement has been signed. We said it's an agreement has been signed. This is BT brinjal. It is definitely for commercial use. So why don't you catch them? Because in their agreement, they do not mention this commercial utilization. They say it is for resource poor farmers, so we will not be doing any benefit sharing, वगैरह. There are no profits involved. Now the loophole here was that when the journalist actually asked Myco about it, their rejoinder was it's a collaborative research project. Actually speaking, we are only doing research, we are not doing any commercial application. So how is it that you actually take them to court with you might be transferring research results, but final goal is what? Your final goal is commercial application of something. So these are the processes where legal minds will need to come in to see, despite its limitations, how is it that we can catch them. Okay, another instance, and very, very interestingly, if you look at any of these agreements, किसी भी agreement में आप देखेंगे, explicitly वो कहीं biotechnology, genetic modification, ये शब्द इस्तेमाल नहीं करते. They don't use that, and commercial utilization भी invariably नहीं करते, because the moment you say commercial utilization, you have to get into a benefit sharing agreement. So you try and avoid that as much as possible. जितना तक हो सके आप वो avoid करें. So this is another example of the Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, where again under a collaborative research project, peanuts की जो varieties थी वो एक New Mexico University में गई हैं, and again in the agreement nothing is mentioned, but if you dig deeper and go through web searches very clearly, the New Mexico University is engaged with the US Department of Agriculture का एक project है for evaluating the genetic variability and enhancing the breeding potential of the peanut. So when you are taking permission, then T.S. Ravindran Center for Plant Breeding and Genetics is taking permission to transfer the research results under a collaborative research project. Explicitly nothing is stated. But New Mexico University has used it up. Genetic material का problem ही है ना. The moment it's out of the country, you don't know where it's gone. You might even just send it for lab testing. उसके बाद control नहीं है. It's not like mining की समझ आता है कि कितना आप encroachment है तो आप पकड़ लेंगे. You'll figure out कि revenue land के आ गया, forest land है, you can catch hold of that person. But with just the material, it's gone. It's gone into some research applications, and then it might return 5 years later, 10 years later in some other form back to us. So it's not visible. This is an interesting case again, currently on hold. Currently, as in the website of the National Biodiversity Authority has not been updated since the last 4 months, but 3 months. So there was this proposal of Devgen seeds or Devgan seeds and crop technology to export rice germplasm to a company or an institution in Kenya, But this has been currently put on hold because they are asking for more information from National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources. So in terms of interventions, if you are tracking these applications for delay tactics, for whatever nuisance creation, for whatever, legally we can use some of these things despite its problems. But very interestingly, if you all remember when I took you back to let's go back to that slide where any kind of this access application had to take permission or they had to be after the consultation with the Biodiversity Management Committee. None of these actually has had that process. In fact, none of the 358 applications that have been approved by the National Biodiversity Authority have had that process. Why have they not had that process? Because there are no biodiversity management committees. So it's that process. But access has continued. So where is it that if you want to challenge things legally, you vis-a-vis GM or otherwise, because it's much more broad-based, it's further. So as I said, number of approvals currently given under the Biological Diversity Act. It's difficult to ascertain how many directly they are for GM because their disclosure is pretty bad. If you look at any of the approval letter will say, please find attached the agreement for your signature. And there is no agreement for any one of us to scrutinize. So then we can go through the right to information route and usko nikale and then all that of course is there. So proactive disclosure is very, very limited. So that's something we as a campaign have been pushing. More and more people need to do it because we need to know two things. We need to know what is the form that the person really filled. Whether it is MICO or me as an individual researcher. Like for instance, there was an individual researcher who wanted to take germplasm of the wild ass from Jangli Gade ka germplasm lena tha kisi zoo se. Now this is an individual. But if you try and trace that person is sending it to a CCMB for DNA testing वगैरह, उसके लिए क्या जा रहा है? So we need to know proactive disclosure what that form is. We need to know what is the agreement that is signed to be able to further scrutinize it. So in many ways pressure needs to be put on the National Biodiversity Authority to do several things to begin with this disclosure. Anyway, 358 approvals. This does not include the last meeting because they have not shared it with anybody. 368 of these approvals, and at least half of them, if not more, must be agriculture related, genetic modification related, or at least biotech related applications. 268 are explicitly for intellectual property rights. And why I'm saying is that Kafi Bar, and we've been talking about a new law. We've been talking about a new law which should have the elements of conservation and regulation. This is a law which has explicitly objective of conservation. संरक्षण की बात करता है सबसे पहले, उसके बाद यूज की बात करता है. So where does the problem really lie? Does it lie in a faulty law, in a faulty implementation, or the faulty thinking that is behind all of this? Where does all our efforts really, where do we need to? Anyway, so things like conflict of interest, etc., जो BT Brinjal के instance में है, GAC के instance में, there are very much similar instances. It's another regulatory regime which is perpetrating itself in the same way. So 161 of these approvals of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research were given in one meeting in the month of August 2007 when the emeritus scientist of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research was on the committee. So it's becoming more of a, it's not an exception anymore. It's coming up more and more. Another 206 approvals were awaiting, etc. So I won't get into too much. As I said, consultations with the BMC is 0, cases of benefit sharing 0, identification of benefit claimers, and I'll talk about benefit claimers a little later, 0. And there are a set of benefit sharing guidelines that are currently up on the National Biodiversity Authority's website about a week back. It's important for everybody to look at and see कि उनकी definition of benefit sharing क्या है. Is it only talking about money? Because a lot of times, even internationally, despite the problem with the concept of benefit sharing, everybody is saying that the benefit sharing bit should be much beyond money, monetary benefits. Benefits can also be that I can continue to do what I have to do. That certain instances will not be applicable to me. I can continue to do access this germplasm, etc. Okay. So anyway, I just want to raise these 2-3 points for all of you. Is the decision making centralized in the kind of structure that I showed? Whether it's for GM or biological material generally, yes, the decision making is extremely centralized. Finally, it is the National Biodiversity Authority that decides on things. It has the provision, the law has the provision of impact assessments, which is environment impact assessments. It has never been put into place. How transparent is the process? Extremely intransparent. बहुत टेक्निकल है, बहुत intransparent है. आपको वेबसाइट पे कुछ आफ्टर राइट टू इन्फॉर्मेशन एप्लीकेशन थोड़ा बहुत इन्फॉर्मेशन मिलेगा, उसके बाद भी नहीं मिलेगा. So in fact, it might be very good, very interestingly, to from different points of view to flood the National Biodiversity Authority with RTI applications and ask them for proactive disclosure. Let them get fed up and let's put everything up. At least basic scrutiny to shuru hogi. Otherwise, people will not even have that kind of thing in their hand. Okay, monitoring. Once that agreement is signed, the agreement says after MAHICO transfers this research result, if there is commercial utilization, they will come back to the National Biodiversity Authority for another approval. Who monitors? There is absolutely no system currently in India or outside that can monitor that. Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, when it sends that germplasm to New Mexico University, if there is commercial utilization, because a lot of times research institutions will tell you, we are just researching. We don't know if there will be any commercial application after this. अभी हम सिर्फ रिसर्च कर रहे हैं, हमें मालूम नहीं इसके रिसर्च का रिजल्ट क्या होगा और उसका कमर्शियल यूटिलाइजेशन होगा कि नहीं. काफी बहुत रिसर्च होती है, इसका नहीं होता है. But there's a clause. If you're using it for commercial use purpose, come back to us. There is absolutely no system to monitor it. So it's yet another thing that is being perpetrating itself. There are a couple of instances where the National Biodiversity Authority, which I shared earlier, in another instance for D1 Oils, which is a biofuel ethanol producing company, उनका भी रोक के रखा था because there was citizens action. Citizens action had kind of brought in some of this information and brought the National Biodiversity Authority to take these decisions. So there is only that much a regulation can achieve. But within that, if we want to use it, this is what we can do. That's what I'm saying. Let's start with the premise. This is what ये हमें regulation दे सकता है. This is all that regulation can give us. Within that, if you want to use it for delay tactics, for nuisance, for whatever, let's use the law and for liability eventually. Okay. There are several more examples. What is interesting as lawyers and legal professionals for all of you is this issue of how does this law actually look at dispute settlement and redressal. And within that, if you really, for instance, let's start with, suppose the National Biodiversity Authority gives permission of some germplasm which is being tested, like एक rice का variety है, which is being tested in Tamil Nadu, which is also being tested in Uttarakhand. Same variety. Now, I as a state biodiversity board have a problem with the National Biodiversity Authority. आपने दे कैसे दी? How did you give this permission? What do I do? Because it is what you are testing in Tamil Nadu is also what I am testing in Uttarakhand. So these are the institutions. So the state biodiversity authority there has to appeal to the central government, which is the Ministry of Environment and Forest. That is the appeal. This little leaflet there gives you all the information about that. And of course, legalistically, you can all look at the law. If there is a problem between two state biodiversity boards, suppose I am doing research in Maharashtra and Karnataka, and my state biodiversity board has given me permission. Maharashtra में मेरे state biodiversity board ने permission दे दी to carry out, to transfer this research result for some purpose outside the country or for commercial utilization. मेरे state biodiversity board को मैंने बता दिया. But Karnataka State Biodiversity Board, which is adjoining, the two states are adjoining, I might have the same germplasm. I have a problem. What do I do? So I go, take the whole thing to, refer it to the National Biodiversity Authority. What is it that I do as I'm a villager? The rice germplasm which that research institute has taken is from my village. I have a biodiversity management committee. मैं क्या करूँ? I have no procedure laid out in the law for it. I cannot, whether it is for the National Biodiversity Authority or the State Biodiversity Board, I have no procedure laid out. So those are the complexity. Now suppose लोग हैं हम लोग, lot of villages are also into commercial utilization, profit making, etc. There are two BMCs. 2 adjoining villages हैं, दोनों के खेत adjoining है. 2 villages, 2 rice varieties or 2 wheat varieties are adjoining each other. One biodiversity management committee has been consulted by the National Biodiversity Authority. The other has not. What do? There is no procedure laid out. Okay? So any person aggrieved then can go to an appeal in the High Court, which I'll just speak about. So how is it that violations can really be brought to book? I don't know how many of you, this is not really an example related to GM per se, but the only instance in India which really became big, जो बहुत बड़ा हो गया था, is जब in Darjeeling there were these 2 Russian scientists who had been collecting insects from there, and they were taking that insects out of the country. They were general taxonomists जो कहते हैं, scientists थे, और वो बिना permission के वो insect varieties बाहर लेके जा रहे हैं. At that point of time, the state forest department got to know, and they were trying to figure out what is it that we do. So in instances like this, when we realize that there is a violation, somebody is taking some germplasm, some insect, some traditional knowledge out of the country, what is it that we do with that instance? What the law basically says is there are only 2 instances where cognizance of offences can take place. 2 तरीके से हो सकता है, या तो एक सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट या अथॉरिटी उस बात को उठाए, like the National Biodiversity Authority, या कोई फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट की एजेंसी, नेशनल बायोडाइवर्सिटी अथॉरिटी, स्टेट बायोडाइवर्सिटी बोर्ड, and now specifically the forest departments have been allowed to raise this issue and say that this is a violation and take action. Or it has to be a benefit claimer. Now the benefit claimer has been described. Suppose somebody is taking this knowledge or this germplasm and accruing commercial benefit out of it. कोई मेरे यहाँ से कुछ ले रहा है and उसका commercial benefit होगा, then I'm saying you are not sharing the benefits with me, so I am a benefit claimer and you have not spoken to me, you are not giving me benefits. So it's only 2 instances that can happen. Now let's go back to the way approvals are actually being given. Nobody is saying commercial utilization. There are no benefit sharing agreements that are being signed. So explicitly disclosure hai hi nahi. So how is it that I really prove I am a benefit claimer? The onus of proof is on me that I am a benefit claimer. You've taken my knowledge and you've taken my germplasm or whatever you've gone with. That is, somebody want to add anything? Anyway, so the law very clearly says about permissions. Suppose somebody doesn't take a permission or doesn't give intimation, then it clearly says that there's imprisonment up to 5 years and fine up to 10 lakhs, etc., etc. This is very clearly written in the law. You can take it from there. If there is punishment for transfer of research results for any foreign national or seeking IPS, again it's very clearly written in the law what the punishment is. The law actually has a clause of revocation of a claim. जो हम लोग पहले बात कर रहे थे, there should be an explicit mention. Any law should say कि अगर आप conditions जो हैं उसको comply नहीं कर रहे हैं, suppose I use a commercial application, किसी चीज के लिए I take permission, I say I'm not going to use it commercially, but I'm using it commercially, then the appeal can technically be revoked. It's not happened till now, but very legalistically it's possible, and it says there are reasons given how this when there is on the basis of reasonable belief that the person to whom the approval was granted has violated any provisions of the Act or any of the conditions under which the approval is given. When a person who has been granted approval has failed to comply with the terms of agreement, very standard kind of clauses, but it's there. Or the failure to comply with any of the conditions of access granted. So you can take only 15 grams of this germplasm and not 25. If you take 25, you actually violate it. Or on account of overriding public interest, which is a very broad clause, which can be argued, of course, in court, and there will be arguments and counter-arguments, what is public interest, etc. But, yeah. Okay. This is the last part of how GM is actually dealt with within the Biological Diversity Act. Very clearly the Act mentions that the central government, which is now the Ministry of Environment and Forests, shall take measures to regulate, manage or control the risks associated with the use and release of living modified organisms resulting from biotechnology likely to have adverse impact. So if the central government wants, it can invoke this clause and say BT brinjal is going to have irreversible damage, etc., and so procedures need to be taken. So they can actually regulate, manage, or control. And control can be used in a liberal sense. You can argue that control can be used in a liberal sense. Anyway, because if BT brinjal is going to affect the biodiversity of the diversity of other brinjal varieties, then you can argue it in a very broad sense. The central government can take measures wherever necessary for assessment of environmental impacts. This is again mentioned in the law, not being used. It gives powers to the State Biodiversity Board. Some State Biodiversity Boards, actually like Kerala, have come very strongly against GM food. So the Biodiversity Act actually gives very broad powers to restrict any activity. It might be genetic modification, it might be mining, it might be anything else. Very broadly, it gives powers to the State Biodiversity Board to restrict activities violative of conservation and consultation with the local body.
So, go to the previous slide. The operative word here is shall. It's a mandate. It's mandatory. The central government has to. It is a responsibility of the central government to take measures. So it is not something that's optional. It's mandated by law. The central government shall take measures for biosafety. So it's going to be interesting now in a situation like this, when if the National Biotechnology Regulatory Authority does go through, and that comes under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Science and Technology, and here you have the Ministry of Environment and Forests trying to implement a conservation law. It has intention to do so. There will also be an issue of interministerial conflict there.
Can you tell us how you can regulate it to the court when the government doesn't take the measures? How you will enforce it to the court? Because the court says policy decision is not the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the court. And policy is to be taken by the central government. And they don't do it. Obviously, so many lapses are there. For example, this GM food, etc. Now, how to regulate it to the court? Where to go? Get the jurisdiction. If you have written in the there will be jurisdiction. We will talk about it. And then some cases like that so far.
Under the Biological Diversity Act, there hasn't been any cases. I don't know about other law.
No, under this law has not been utilized by the community yet.
It is going to be introduced. How to check it? It should not be introduced.
What should I? GM? Yes. I mean, what we're pointing out is, even without making any new laws or bringing out any new executive orders, here is a Conservation Act which allows the central government to take action if it wants to.
But if the government fails,
yes,
which is as usual it fails, how to get it to the courts?
Yes, at max there are provisions, general provisions of offences by companies. Where at max there will be a fine of a couple of lakh rupees or an imprisonment of the company director or the CEO. But look at it in reality. Look at the scale and sheer economic clout of a large company like Monsanto, whose annual turnover is several $1 million. And so a 1 lakh rupee or a max 5 lakh rupee doesn't really make a dent in terms of trying to prevent it from or setting an exemplary, precedent in that sense. So these are how even if you have good legal provisions in the law, in reality, in real life, the scale of what we are up against is so massive that we need a different kind of organizing. I mean, we can't put all our eggs into this basket of just having a good law. There will have to be a larger legal, public opinion built around these issues.
But legal opinion will take time.
Yes.
And by the time these things are introduced, GM foods, and how to check it that it is stopped?
Well, I wouldn't say it's purely a legal solution. It will have to be a multi-pronged approach where we use every trick in the book in a sense, or every option that we have.
There is litigation against introduction of GM foods currently in the Supreme Court. There are people who are taking it on at state levels, etc. There are small efforts that are happening. Vis-a-vis this law, if suppose the central government does not regulate, manage or control, explicitly in the law there is no provision that is mentioned. You can use other constitutional and other provisions and take it to court, which I think has been done. Like in one instance with the... Yeah.
Yes.
Right of life is now right.
So it has been done also, it is being argued. But
Are there some cases, are there some precedents?
Not on GM, not from India. But in other instances like in Germany or even in France, some of the companies were taken to court under consumer protection law, or saying that this is misrepresentation. What you were saying that there will be yield, it was an issue of non-performance of a product which was bought, or that there was misleading of the public on the or underplaying of the risks involved, like in France. So there have been instances, or like in South Africa, where the matter went right up to the constitutional bench, where NGO, South African NGO called BioWatch, took Monsanto to court, saying that this, you haven't held appropriate trials, and the judge unfortunately had been bought over. But there was a dissenting judge which created an opening for the NGO BioWatch to approach a constitutional bench, because at the Supreme Court level or the High Court level there, they held in favor of Monsanto and put this is unprecedented. They put damages or costs on the NGO for bringing Monsanto to court, which was a huge amount of money, which would have meant that the NGO would close down. But because of in the judgment, the dissenting judge said that no, this should not be allowed, and so therefore it gave an opening for the NGO to approach the constitutional bench, which then allowed in favor of the NGO. So there have been different dimensions, whether it's on the performance of the GMCs, or on misrepresentation, or on lack of biosafety trials. There have been these instances, or like in the Percy Schmeiser, the Canadian farmer in Canada, who filed a case against Monsanto, because he said he came to court saying that I have not violated Monsanto's IPR or patented seed by using it. You have polluted and caused genetic pollution in my organic field. So different instances are there which might be interesting to track in different jurisdictions. But we'll let Kanchi finish and then we'll open it up.
yeah, just last 2 or 3 things. There is a very broad provision under which now a recent set of guidelines have come in under this law, which allows for state governments to declare biodiversity heritage sites. And if we actually very broadly look at these biodiversity heritage sites, within that insert, these are areas of biodiversity importance. So if you say that this area is of biodiversity importance and there is one district or one whatever,
Kerala is ecological fragile.
that's yes, the ecological sensitive area.
Social standard actors. Ecological fragile.
Right.
You cannot render.
Yeah. So here also, if you put in one conclusion that 25 kilometers or 50 kilometers around this biodiversity heritage site, there will be no introduction of GM. Very broadly, which some groups have started thinking about. You declare an area and say, like you have national parks and sanctuaries, you say around this national parks and sanctuaries, 15 kilometers around national parks and sanctuaries, there will be no mining, there will be no dam and nothing. So 25 kilometers around this biodiversity heritage site, there will be no introduction of genetic modified organism order. In the short term, use some of these clauses, while with the larger battles are on. This has not been used at all till now, but it's possible. Okay, anyway, just to sum up some of the points that I was trying to raise. The biodiversity law, larger issue of regulation. It is, bringing in an efficiency within the model of access by saying that biological material can be used for commercial purposes. So it has to be accessed. You brought in a framework. You brought in an efficiently working framework. Has it really restricted? Has it really conserved? It has not. The examples I've shown to you is actually, facilitated access. It has centralized governance and decision making, which needs to be reversed. Currently, the National Biodiversity Authority and MOEF is asking for amendments to the Act. So if we want, we can still go in and give suggestions and say that no, the current governance structure is very centralized, reverse it, in some way, or bring in elements that increases what is called transaction cost. If you increase the transaction cost, like I have to go through layers and layers and layers and layers of permission and not single window, maybe things will get delayed, and that will give enough more time to do scrutinies, to build movements, etc. Does it actually open all biodiversity to trade? By the moment it says by biosurvey, bioutilization, except for endangered species, etc., does it really open all biodiversity to trade? Which before the law was biopiracy. That's something we need to contrast. Okay, sorry, this will repeat. And this whole issue of leniency towards Indian nationals, Indian trade. This is what we need to see, because many times more and more examples that are coming up is both collaborative research and Indian companies, they do not go